Welcome Arun to this CTQ Smartcast.
Hi Harish. It's a pleasure, always a pleasure speaking to you and Ramanand. So I'm very glad to be on this podcast.
Sure. So, for the benefit of our audience, Arun gave us a simple, pithy one-line intro. He said, you can just say Arun Iyer is an executive vice president with Hexanika and a published author. We know that Arun is a man of multiple interests as well. So through the course of the next 1 hour or so, we will try to unpack some of, what Arun does and what Arun likes, and try to glean away something that is going to be of our interest from the lens of future relevance. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's start with, with the time when I actually first met you, Arun. So let's start with your role at Cognizant Technology Solutions. So, you were there in the senior business analyst role, and there was also this whole the two in a box model at Cognizant. So, just going back to where it all started for you, right? So, what did that role really demand of you, and how was your experience at Cognizant?
Yeah. So I think when I look back at my career right now, 25 years, I think what I did at Cognizant really shaped what I am today, right? And the reasons are multifold. One is when I joined Cognizant, it was one of the emerging companies, right, in the IT services world, and it was trying to establish a slightly differentiated business model. And I think in that, and some of the leaders with whom I got to work, some of whom are still my mentors today, they were shaping up a new business model. One of these, as you said, was the two in a box, and also as part of that, setting up a business-oriented focus to the company, right, where services world, which was traditionally more in India doing maybe low-end technology work, Cognizant was one of the sort of early companies who recognized that, hey, understanding the customer's business is going to make that the service that you offer to them much more valuable, right? So, and hence, I think this emergence of setting up in those days we used to call it a domain competency group, which evolved into becoming a consulting group, right? So, why that period was very, very crucial and important for me is that as that model was being established, right, and you being there and getting an opportunity to set up that model, be part of the core team, which is really establishing that model, making sure that you are presenting what differentiators you have to the customer, right? All of that gave a very, very unique perspective to us, because in the earlier days, it was like, okay, you are doing some technology work offshore, and yeah, at best you would get to go onshore and be at the customer's location, right? You never really went beyond the scope of what you just did. This was the first time that we were beginning to look at the industry as a whole, always exploring what more we can take to the customer, right? So, and I think that was really the crux of why that two in a box model really succeeded, right? Because you had clear responsibilities allocated to individuals having that skill. So there was a person who was customer focused, who had the customer relationship skills. There was the delivery person who was more execution oriented, and there was a domain or a consulting person who understood the business. And when these three came together, although it was called two in a box, then they came up with three in a box and all of that. But essentially it means people with specialized skills coming together, working as a homogeneous team to deliver something more than what they would do individually, right? So that's what was the crux of that model, and I think it really succeeded for the company and of course for all the people who are associated with it. So that's what I think that phase of being in Cognizant really allowed people like me, my peers, right, for us to really carve out a specific career path, which erstwhile was probably there. It was like you are a business analyst, but we gave the term business analyst a whole new meaning and relevance into that ecosystem, right? So, and I think that's what really helped me evolve from being a business analyst to eventually a consultant, and today more focused around product management. And we'll come to that as to when we talk as to how I've seen myself gaining new skills that I have been able to use as I've progressed in my career.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Arun. You brought out quite a few aspects that I wanted to talk about, like the specific career path that you could carve out for yourself. When we talk about future relevance, it's as much about looking at what you are doing today and keeping a deliberate eye on where you're going to go next. What is it going to take to actually move from point A to point B? So was there any deliberate thought around that, that these are the kind of opportunities that you are getting because of, this role and the way the organization was structured in Cognizant as compared to the other services companies, who were also prominently doing something else in a completely different way? So was there any deliberate thought, you also mentioned mentors. So any specific advice that you got, anything that you did then, which, you hold dear to your heart, that yes, this is something that I did well, something that you repent that, why did I not do that back in those days? Can you briefly talk about
no, absolutely, very, very pertinent questions, right? Because when you are going through a fast-paced career growth, and I do believe that 5-6 year period at Cognizant was very fast-paced for everybody who was there, right? You gain a lot, but at the same time, you may miss out on some things also, because you're following a path in a certain pace, and you're so focused that you may miss out on few other things, right? So coming to what I did consciously, right? And I was always I did my computer engineering, right? So I was not that I didn't have any technology background, but I never wanted to be a programmer per se, right? I mean, that was not my core skills. I was, even when I was doing my engineering, my focus was more around solutioning, right? How can I put together things and create something, right? Now, as a business analyst, I think that allowed me that opportunity, that hey, can I, if we are creating something, right? At the end, software is creation of some idea into a technical piece of work that does get things done, right? So in that context, being able to assimilate what the customer wanted and then put it together so that he can develop, build it, and present it back to the customer, right? That was the kind of work that we started getting in the early days, right? And that I was very conscious that I don't want to be the person who is developing. Today, you talked about what you regret. I probably regret also to some extent that I didn't passionately take up programming, right? Because I did have the skills, but it never interested me. I was more keen on sort of being the architect kind of this thing, which is something that I have consciously built on, right? I always wanted to create or co-create things, right? And of course, as a developer also you create, but when I say create, I mean visualize it, envision it, lay out the contours of what it should be doing, how it should be doing. And that's what I managed to do as a business analyst, then as a business architect, as a consultant. And then finally, my current role, right? As I see it as a culmination of that desire that, hey, I want to create something, I want to build something from scratch, right? Give me a blank canvas and tell me this is the problem, and I will find out a solution. That was always my passion. And I think I consciously use that opportunity to keep building on that, right? Even in Cognizant, I used to take up roles wherever there was a new solution, and we worked on some of those, right? Hey, how can we create something cool? You guys were the technology innovation guys, we were the business guys, and we were trying to marry these two things and say, hey, what different can we take to the customer? And that's what always attracted me, and that's one thing I have consciously built upon, right? That's what I think has benefited me. And on the flip side, as I said, right, today I see the relevance of understanding programming or being able to do programming skills a lot more, especially. And we'll talk about, I guess, how you change your skill sets over a period of time, right? What becomes relevant and irrelevant over a period of time, right? I think today's relevance is more about, when we talk of data sciences and other things, machine learning, the programming skills are as crucial as just being able to envision things. So that is one area I think I could have focused, although I did get an opportunity in the last 3 years to sort of hone up a little bit on that. But that is an area I would have loved to be equally competent on, right? Of course, you don't get to be a master of everything, but I am glad at least I know that area. I can work with somebody who is an expert there, and together we can co-create.
Right. We come to your current role at Hexanika. There was one more, innings of yours that I wanted to talk about. When you moved from Cognizant to Tech Mahindra, was there a change in the kind of, decisions you had to take? Did you move from a more business consulting to a business, role? And what did that, then involve? And how did you prepare for that, for that change?
Yes. And see, again, joining Tech Mahindra, I didn't have much idea about Tech Mahindra as an organization. For us, especially for us in Pune, right? British Tech Mahindra, British Telecom, that is the image we had of Tech Mahindra. Like, it's a telecom company, right? So there was a lot of skepticism initially for me when I decided to take that role. But I realized that, again, it's that drive to create something from scratch, and this was an opportunity to create a practice in the financial services capital markets. That was my core strength. That drove me. Okay, maybe I can go and create something, build something from scratch, help establish something, right? Whereas in Cognizant, I was part of that journey, but I was just probably a cog in that big wheel that was driving things, right? So we did have an impact, but I felt that here I could maybe have a larger impact, given that it was a very fledgling practice for them. So that was what drove me to that decision to start with. Now, you asked about what changed, right? And it was definitely a big change. Cognizant, by design, had set up a very well-defined structure, right? That, hey, this all that we talked about, two in a box, on-site, offshore, verticalization. These were all those at that time really new concepts, and right, which really made it successful. That whereas here, it was by design, that organization's design, but I found it to be extremely chaotic, right? So now, from working in a two in a box where you always knew who your counterpart was, I was working with n number of two in a boxes, right? So for US, you are talking directly with the salespeople. The structure is very loosely geography oriented. So each geography is doing their thing, even though they're all chasing the same client. So there were some at times chaotic things. The same customer, a global customer, a team in US is trying to position something, a team in UK is also chasing the same customer, and sometimes they don't talk to each other at all, right? Because they are actually internally competing. And that's where I think some of the good practices I learned in Cognizant, I could try and establish. Hey, how do you bring all of these independently moving parts together? That is one thing that was challenging, but at the same time, something I could bring from what I had done and set a semblance of structure. That is point one as to what changed and how I had to adapt to that situation. Second is, you also talked about, from a consulting oriented, again, because of the nature of the organization and where it was, right? You did not have traditional strengths or examples to go and win new customers, right? So it was always about thinking completely out of the box. What can we do? How can we structure a deal different from, if I'm competing with Cognizant and a TCS, both of which have billion-dollar banking practices, and we don't even have $100 million practice. How can you differentiate yourself? And that was what allowed or forced us to interact at a completely different level. You're no longer now talking business competencies, you're talking organizational competencies, you're talking how we can structure a deal and make a difference, you're talking profitability, and how do you make sure that you bundle a number of IT services which are your strengths into something which the customer may see value in, right? So the kind of deals that I got to work in Tech Mahindra was of a different nature, in the sense that I was constantly, you talked about moving from a consultant to a more executive decisioning role, and I did get an opportunity to play that in a relatively smaller scope of span of influence, because it was a small practice. But nevertheless, there were frequently deals where not only the head of the region, but the CEO used to get involved, right? Because it was that strategically important for them as a customer to win that deal. And that gave a different, we are constantly looking at new acquisitions. We were constantly looking at mergers deals or asset monetization. How do we take a customer's asset and build a service around it? So these were new deal structures and new ways of sort of winning business to which I got exposure. That was the learning there. Although it was a shorter stint, 3 years, a little less than 3 years, but that's what I benefited.
Right. And when people make this kind of a switch where they have to move from either say an individual contributor role to a consulting kind of a role to something like this that you just talked about, you need to develop that sense of the larger picture. You need to actually also understand, what you are doing, how does it contribute to the, to the bottom line eventually of the company. A lot of times, people lose sight of that. They're more focused on their deliverables. They're doing a fantastic job, but that transition is what is has been seen as sometimes very tricky for some very talented folks. So what would your advice be for people who are making that switch in terms of how should they develop that kind of a mindset when they move from this managerial to an executive, a business owner kind of a
Correct.
progression?
Yeah, and I honestly, I would say it was a very big challenge for me, right? And I talked about how I've been passionate about creating something, right? And very often we would say that, okay, let's pool in these resources and let's create an asset, right? So we were all services companies. Building a product was, except for TCS and Infosys, which had product development arms, most of us didn't build end-to-end products. We built small solutions and this thing. So we used to pull in those resources and do it. But occasionally a decision point would come where you had to take a decision that, hey, okay, we've done enough here. Now you have to look at the bottom line, the profitability, right, the utilization of people, and you yourself had to cut your own initial thought. That was a harsh decision to take at times, right, because you are passionate about certain things, right, and so that is a decision or a skill. I wouldn't say it's a skill, but it's a quality one has to develop, right, to be able to assess that not everything has an endless sort of, you can keep doing it. At some stage you have to make a business call that, hey, this makes sense or doesn't make sense. In a way it was frustrating, and eventually one of the reasons I moved from a services setup to a product company, and we'll talk about that, is because of that limitation that the services world enforced on your this thing. Right? You had to make clear decisions at certain points that, hey, okay, we put enough investment. Unless we are going to get a customer who is going to buy this, there is no point in just keeping resources blocked for this. So these were certain. At the end, it was about bottom line, resource utilization. These were some metrics that every services organization measured. Right? When you are a manager, you are just probably doing the same thing, but you are not the person having to make that decision that, hey, okay, increase utilization. Somebody is telling you, or get these people allocated or something, right? But then when you become the person taking that decision, you realize that, hey, it is not that you want to do it, but the business demands you to make those decisions, right? So that perspective came to me, right? When I was on the domain side, we used to always say, hey, how are you going to get new things if you don't invest in business analysts in doing this kind of solutioning work? But then you realize that, hey, okay, up to a point, any organization can invest, but then for them, it's the next quarter's bottom line and top line that is of important. And you have to learn to see that bigger picture, right? When especially when you are an organization which is 2 lakh people and all, right? You are so focused in a very small, maybe 100, 200 member team. To be able to extrapolate that to your business unit and hence to the organization needs you to change the perspective a little bit. Right? It's not an easy thing. It comes with a little bit of experience and you being forced to take such decisions. That's when you rationalize in your mind, okay, I have to do this, and that's why it is important for me to do this. Right? I mean, I used to always fight with my boss also. Hey, boss, if we stop this, all these 6 months of effort we have put is going down the drain, right? But that was it is. You should finally say that, okay, let's learn from what we've invested, and then see if we can use it in the future, right? And but for now, we have to stop and move ahead. These were certain decisions that I had to take, and of course, even in a product startup, you have to take such decisions. But the level of control you have over those decisions changes, and the drivers for those decisions also changes in a services and a consulting setup versus a product.
Right. Yeah. So before we move forward, I'm going to ask you a quiz question, Arun. We love our quizzing. We know you are interested in quizzing, so we're not going to let you get away without answering these quiz questions. And to make it more interesting, the quiz questions that we have are in some way related to you. Okay. Whatever you do and what your interests are, and to make sure there is something at stake. You're going to get a prize for every question that you get right. You will get a discount code on our daily reader of the CTQ compounds. So you can gift it to whoever you want to. Okay. So the first question is: zoos use a regular household object to influence flamingos to breed. So what regular household object do you think zoos would be using, and why?
Zoos.
Yeah. Zoo. The
zoo. Okay. Zoo. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Flamingos.
So they use something which you will find in every house. It's a very regular household item, and they use it in zoos to influence flamingos to breed.
Okay. I don't know, but flamingos love algae.
No, algae is not a household object.
So
think of a household.
Some households have it. The moss develops, but certainly not.
Okay. So, for the benefit of our, listeners, the reason why I'm asking this question is that, Arun is also very avid bird watcher. So he does birding. Is it called birding? Bird watching at a place called Bhigwan, which is very close to Pune, from where he has, posted this fantastic pictures of flamingos that he has taken. So if you just paid attention to what I just spoke, Arun, you may have got a clue. So yeah, what were those pictures all about when you took them?
Flamingos, they were.
How many of them were there?
100.
Okay. 100. So yeah, so in a zoo, how many do you typically find?
A number of flamingos, about 20, 30 maybe.
Right. Yeah. So if you want to influence flamingos to breed, what household object are you going to use to trick them?
Mirrors.
Exactly. They actually place mirrors around flamingos to make them believe that they're part of a flock.
And your clue certainly helped. I wouldn't have gotten that without your clue of numbers.
Yeah, but you got it right. So great answer there, Arun. So how often do you go out for bird watching? Even not now with
but Bhigwan I try to do at least once a year. It's an annual thing, right? Of course, I don't claim to be an expert bird watcher or something. I know people who are really passionate about that. For me, it's more of an evolving hobby, right? And in fact, last year during the lockdown, right, me and my wife, just sitting at our home, we started observing the birds that used to come and and the season as summer approaches, and this is the time, right? A lot of them start breeding koels, and then you have the starlings, mynas, bulbuls, all of them. And it was a good education for our kids also, right? Incidentally, a pair of bulbuls put a nest, and they laid eggs there. In fact, a couple of those tailor birds, they also built a nest in our balcony. So it was fascinating watching them live. I mean, for them, it's a life. It's a short life, right? But they go about a routine, right? Early morning, you'll see them active, and then they will disappear, doing whatever they do, and then in the evening they'll again come back and do certain things. And so it was very fascinating to see uh, all these different species of birds, the colors. I am fascinated by colors. I love uh, colors, be it flowers, be it birds, and that's what. It was a good learning for us as a family to observe these birds, try and identify what they are. Right. So for me, it's just an evolving hobby. I would love to do more of birding. I want to go to Bharatpur once. Right. The bucket list of places to visit never ends. You just keep adding. You just don't get the time to visit. But yeah, I think I love Big One. It's a beautiful spot, especially Jan Feb is a nice time to spend a few hours with. If kids really love it's serene, quiet, and the variety you see is amazing. So.
Right, yeah. And taking a leaf out of how and why these birds migrate and how they prepare for their own future. Let's come back to our earlier topic of discussion. So if you were to advise, say, somebody who's just starting off with a career in the whole business analyst kind of a track, what would you advise in terms of the skills that people should pick up, thinking about their future relevance, who or what could replace them? And in fact, I will give two subparts to this question. What would be your advice to people who are just starting off in this career, and what would be your advice to people who have spent, say, a decade and a half in this track? Are they in danger of being replaced by people or algorithms? Is there a danger?
Yeah, no, sir, certainly. When coming to the second part about the dangers of this role. So business analyst it's been a role that has been there for ages. It still has the relevance, but as you rightly say that every role, the contours of what it should do and how it should do keeps changing. You have to put it in context of what is relevant today, and then at the end it's just a role, right? What it does is what is more important. You can call it a business analyst, system analyst, anything you want, but what value you are adding to any team makes is much more this thing. So today, if I have to look at what we did 10 years back, right, the knowledge of the business was paramount, right? That's what differentiated how much you understand the customer's business. Now, and that was because of the need of that there where new systems, core systems were being developed, right? Processes were being redefined. A lot of automation was still happening, right? Banks, and at least our customers were banks, and the same holds true for a retail or any other organization. That the technology was undergoing a radical shift from, in those days, what was legacy mainframes to more three-tier architecture and all of that, right? Java and web services and all of this was coming up. So that needed a very deep knowledge of the business, and I think a lot of us survived with that skill set, and we hired a lot from these schools, right? So the combination of analytical skills to be able to put things together and the understanding of the business is what made a lot of us, and that's how we build huge teams, right? 1,000 people doing this kind of work at customer locations and offshore and solutioning, and we called it some consulting. Some of it was real consulting, some of which was just a flavor of consultative work. But nevertheless, that was the need of the hour. Now, I think the main thing that has shifted, again, the technologies have taken a radical shift, right? So it's all about, and the industry calls it 3.0 and whatever, digital, whatever name you may give it, but it is about more customer-centric flows, right? At one end, right? How do you make the customer experience a lot better? And to facilitate that is going deep into the data and how to churn out intelligence out of that, right? So the skill sets as the domain has become a given. I mean, you just being a business analyst with banking expert is no longer sufficient in my view, right? It is now understanding of statistics, data, how data has to be sort of what they call as blended, merged, and to generate insights based on that and allow banks or the clients to take decisions is more important, right? So the ability to go deep down beyond just the process is what is important, right? Look at the data. That is one skill that I think a lot of business analysts still miss, right? And I remember even 5 years back, and some of my colleagues, I'll name Anshuman, you know some of them, right? Ashish, Amod. We were all very, very keen that people build that skill sets of data and data analysis and data science. And today, 6-7 years down the line, we see that that's what is important, right? And that is relevant. Second is, again, related to that is being able to go beyond just banking. So today, if you are able to appreciate things at that level, data and the customer experience, then the domain probably doesn't matter as much. Today, a very good programmer himself, by virtue of being in that industry, knows the domain reasonably well. So that being a core differentiator of your skill set is no longer a strength, I would say. So that's where the obsolescence scope is there. If you have continued to say, no, I will not do anything other than this capital markets or core banking, right? That is not sufficient. The ability to move beyond, wider your scope, at least go banking in general, if not beyond banking, and then going deep into the data and those elements. That is one. Second is where business analyst role has evolved, especially with, and you've been familiar, agile technologies and all of that. Business analyst's role of being able to do a project manager or a scrum master, somebody who can bring together all these teams to achieve a goal, right? That is a skill set that can naturally come to a business analyst because, right, in most of these agile teams, you have this product owner or backlog owner, right? So which at the end is about understanding the business, what are the feature sets to build, prioritize them, and roll them out in your sprints, right? And somebody who appreciates the business, has that broader picture, can tie it all together. So that's a skill I would say is very relevant, and a lot of business analysts have morphed into that BA PM or BA Scrum Master role. And I think that is a skill at least emerging business analysts can focus on, right? Not just look at the business, but look at elements of how delivery is done, right? And for that, you need a little bit of technical skills. You have to work with developers. You need a little bit of what they call as continuous delivery skills, right? How do you make sure you are continuously rolling out features sprint after sprint? So these are some new skills that if the business analyst adds, it will definitely help. And lastly, what I have, I think, successfully probably done, right? At least that's what I work towards, is to get into product management itself, right? And when I say product, need not be a product company. Even in a services company, having that product mindset, product management mindset, can make a lot of difference, or you can add a lot of value to engagements that you're doing with customers, right? How do you look at any problem as a larger piece of a puzzle, and what are the pieces that you need to put in at what time, and how do you bring it all together, right? That's a skill that product management really brings. In fact, I had written a post in LinkedIn when after spending a year in this role. A product manager, in my view, is like a pragmatist, right? So you have to be in the shoes of at least 5 people, right? So you have to be in the shoes of the CEO who has this grand vision. Oh, we are going to change the world. We are going to come up with this magic product which will solve the customer's problem. We are going to radically change things for them, right? You have the technologist who is, again, let's use this technology, or I don't care what technology, I can bring it all together, right? So making those technology choices. You have the marketing guys, you have to be in their shoes, say whatever we build, or at least build a minimum value viable product which we can take to the market, start convincing them about the idea, right? And then you have to also be in the shoes of the operations or the finance guy, right? Because you have limited budget, especially, and limited time and resources. Everything is limited. So how do you, so it's a complex equation. If you put it in an equation, you have limited time, you have limited resources, and you have to come up with a high quality customer satisfying product, right? It doesn't all, they're all pulling you in different directions. So that when you get into that product management role, these are skills that really emerge, right? How do you look at various facets of delivering an outcome? And it's not just time and people. There are a lot more things about what you need to put into perspective. So these are, a business analyst can, in my view, become a very good product manager, right? But for that, you have to acquire a few skills, a little bit of project management, a little bit of technology understanding, a little bit of data sciences, given that a lot of work today happens around data and associated technologies. So this would be my advice to people in that role, right? It's not irrelevant, but it can get obsolete in the form that you are if you don't change your or add skill sets to your own capability.
Right. Yeah. So what I'm also listening here is that just being well read and being more curious about the larger picture, not just being restricted to what you're doing. And
right.
The people that you mentioned, people that I also know, are clear examples of these curious people who are looking at future trends. What is it that's going to impact their industry as a whole, not just
right.
their project or not just their
Correct.
own account, right? So that also having these different interests, probably you are then able to bring that some kind of a multidisciplinary approach to life in general, right?
Right.
So that makes a big difference.
Correct. And see, you guys talk about up level. I think that's a key word and very useful and important term, right? When I look at up leveling, it is the term need not be just be moving up. I mean, the skill sets, it can go breadth wise, it can go low also. I mean, one of the biggest things I learned in this role last 3 years is to do things which erstwhile I would have said that it is not my job, it is somebody else's job. But at times, I mean, of course, you don't need to do everything yourself, but having the ability to do things which are right, or bringing down your skill set a little bit, taking it up and expanding it horizontally. All this collectively is what is up leveling to me, right? It's not just about moving up the value chain, it is moving in multi-direction, and that's what you rightly said. It's a multidisciplinary thought process you need to have, right? How do I manage time, resources? How do I expand my understanding of the business? How do I understand how people who are developers or the team members work, and how do you empathize with their way of working? And a completely, especially people with like me, who are like in the later end of our career, we are working with a team which is of a completely different mindset, right? Their priorities are different, the way they work is different. Some of them are so skilled at such a young age that if you don't down level yourself to their way of thinking, right, you may feel isolated, right? Because you have to really understand why they are doing things in a particular way, right? They may not follow a strict structured regime that you are used to. They are very unstructured. Or they will work 2 hours in the morning and then 3 hours at night, and they will do the same amount of work that you would have done in a normal 8 hours. So being appreciative of that and being able to bring all of these, your own skills and the skills of people around you together, is what can make you a successful leader, in my view.
Right. So you've already spoken a bit about your role at Hexanika, but if you can, tell me more about what does this role of this Chief Product Officer at Hexanika really mean? And was this a very deliberate shift, like you said? Was this the next level for you when you said, okay, I've now spent decade and a half, almost 20 years in this line, and this is the next step for me.
Right.
So just talk to me about this.
Sure. So I talked about earlier the innate desire in me to create something, right? It was always there. I said sometime in my life I will do something which is product oriented, right? If it is not even my own product, I may not be an entrepreneurial. I have an entrepreneurial mindset, but I would definitely want to work in a a product setup, maybe a startup which is still trying to build something and sort of create something. So when I first met through again a friend, this Hexanika leadership, the CEO and others. One thing that struck me is that the business area that they were trying to solve was very much similar to a problem statement I was trying to address in Tech Mahindra. And I talked about the fact that I had to take the decision and cut that project because of other priorities, right? And I had to let go of resources. And we reached a certain stage, and then we said that, okay, that's all we'll do. And this was almost like as if somebody was telling me, oh, you did this. This is exactly what you're going to do here, but here you have no constraints, right? You will build it from scratch, and you can bring in all your pull in all your resources. So that seemed like a very logical extension of what I was trying to do, and aligned with what I wanted to do, right? So that it was not a easy decision, right? Because I had to completely think that for the next 3 years I may not have a salary, and all those things were there, right? So it was a risk oriented decision, but it aligned, the timing was right, and was something that I felt I always wanted to do. So the decision eventually was taken, and now that I am in this setup, right? And you talked about how from Cognizant to Tech Mahindra there was a cultural shift. This was an even massive shift in terms of culture, right? So first thing was to try and figure out that, hey, we have how do you really shape this product and organization, right? So as a chief product officer, chief product officer, that title is just to say, but at the end you are somebody who is responsible to make sure that there is this two-slider vision that somebody has defined, right? That now you have to put it into place, you have to give it the real shape, and also execute it. And it's like somebody has said, we want to build a 50-story building here, right? Because this place has huge commercial potential, and this is how it should look like. It should be west facing. It should do this. So these are the broad terms. Now you come in and you decide, right? What should be the facade like? You are the architect. You decide what technologies to use and all of that. So that was fascinating in the sense making those decisions early on. And of course, one thing I learned here is that in such a setup, you have to fail fast. You have to take certain, again, the decision making capability I talked about helped here, that, hey, you go down a path, but you should not get married to that path, because you may realize that, hey, this is probably not what the customer wants. And then you have to pivot and slightly change things, right? Obviously, if you are believe in what your broader vision is, that doesn't change. If your vision only changes, then you are probably doing completely different things. But keeping that same target, you may have to traverse slightly different paths, take different, change the speed with which what features you deliver and how you deliver it. So those were some decisions that I had to take very early on, right? And that was not only interesting, but it was fascinating how you are relying on directly now on customer feedback, right? You are in a position where whatever you're building is going to directly impact a bunch of potential customers. And when you take that concept to them, some of them love it, some of them may find it, hey, it's not, why do you think it is relevant? I've already spent millions of dollars doing this. Why do you think you are different, right? So taking all that feedback but still staying true to that vision is something which was the biggest challenge for me, right? And I think that was, as a chief product officer, so to say, those are the things, right? As I said, you have to play multiple roles. You have to convince your technology head that, okay, let's try something different, or why something is good, right? Those intense debates, technology debates you to have. Marketing, we had limited marketing resources, so you essentially become the marketing guy, taking the product concept to the customer, demonstrating and all of that. So these are all new skills, I'm not saying they were new skills for me. I had done them in Cognizant, in Tech Mahindra, in different roles, but here the impact that those decisions were much larger, right? Because you are probably one of that 10-member team, and you and the CEO and the CTO, that these are the three people who are taking the decisions. So all your decisions have a direct impact on the small team unit that you have. Whereas in a billion-dollar organization, I mean, you are just not even 1% of what the organizational revenue is. But here, every dollar you earn is the only revenue that you have. So those were some tough decisions to make at different points in time, right? When you say that, hey, we'll go this path, and say, okay, let's leave this, right? The trickiest thing is to take the decision between continuing to do that, hoping that, hey, okay, if this customer does, or this set of customers don't like it, maybe with some changes, something else would work, versus saying that, no, let's not focus on this at all, let's do something else, right? Especially
Arun, let me interrupt you here for a brief thing. Can you quickly describe what the product is and who your customers are?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, yeah. So we were building a data management and analytics platform with focus on regulatory compliance, right? So and even in if you see in services company, a lot of work that in the risk and compliance that we did was more around banks having to, in those days, there were a lot of these compliance changes after 2008. You know that, right? So banks had to churn out so many of these reports, and the crux of the problem that they had was data was of not good quality. It was all in different systems, so getting it all together. So a lot of banks spent millions of dollars trying to streamline their data processes, right? And that's where we saw an opportunity that while doing this, banks are spending enormous amount of dollars, putting in 5-6 different technologies in place. So we thought that, hey, if there is a single end-to-end platform which can do everything from sourcing data to generating the output and anything in between that is required to make sure that data is of good quality, it is transformed, it is mapped to and the reporting as per the regulator. If we can bring it all together, it would be an immense value add to especially the small, medium banks who don't have that kind of resources to set up huge data warehouses, data lakes, and other things, right? So that was the thought process behind building this platform. It was a data-oriented platform, but with clear business outcome. We didn't want to be in a space where we are a generic data platform. We were very clear that the data platform will just be the enabler to come up with business-focused solutions, right? So now today we have solutions in regulatory reporting, in AML compliance, right? So we have built a variety of solutions on top of our core platform. And our target segment is the small, medium-sized banks, credit unions, community banks. We continue to focus on US market because that's where we see the maximum opportunity. But now we are coming up with a SaaS software as a service version. So in that sense, right, it was for me, it was an extension. It was in the same domain in which I had expertise in. It was data and analytics oriented, right? So again, a new skill sets that interested me, data sciences, and that's how what I did really made sense to me, and I've been doing that for 3 years now. But that's about the product. But making sure that when you're building such a huge platform, right, which does a lot of things, not every customer may see value in everything that you have. So how do you componentize that product and make sure that you can deliver pieces of that product to address specific customer problems, right? That was the biggest challenge, that, hey, let's not build this monolith, which we have to go and tell the customer, this is what you will get. Otherwise, you have to buy everything, right? How do you make it modular enough so that if a customer has a specific problem, we fit there also. If they have a bigger problem, we fit there as well. And in that, we did spend a lot of time and effort in actually developing that, because you had to architect it the right way. You couldn't just okay, let's start developing and see what comes out of it. You had to really spend time to prototype, validate, and then build out the platform.
Something that's very interesting, Arun, here you mentioned the importance of failing fast. Given an industry like banking, which is seen as a very traditional, slow to change kind of an industry, given the regulation, and you are bang, your product and platform is bang in the space of regulation. So how do you manage this failing fast? And if you can give a concrete example of what that means in your space, that'd be great.
Right, sure. So when again, regulations, you rightly said, right, that banks are I used to think that banks are at the forefront of technology and all of that, right? But I think maybe that was 20 years back. Today, I think banks are the slowest when it comes to new technology adoption, right? I think retail and e-commerce and all are much faster adapters of technology. But banks do have traditional problems, right? They have huge amount of data. There are complexities in their business, and regulations, although they don't change very frequently, but there has been, especially in the US, as governments change, the regulations change, new things keep coming, right? And that's where there is an opportunity that we saw, that hey, new regulations are there, and not every bank is equally invested in making this change, because as you rightly said, a lot of banks are slow, and that's the opportunity. If you can demonstrate value to them that we can change things for you for the better, but at a much lower cost that you would have traditionally done, maybe there is a case for that. So that's about how do you sell to a market which is probably not as fast moving or not so easily amenable to making large changes, right? So that is point. First point that you talked about was example of failing fast, right? And their examples were around choice of technology, right? So again, there's always a tendency to choose a technology which is the hottest at that point of time, right? So and technology has this bad habit of changing rapidly, right? Within 5 years, something that was hot becomes irrelevant, right? So those were the areas where we made some choices. Started with, okay, let's go big data, right? Hadoop and all of that, right? And then by the time we had come up with our first iteration of products, Hadoop was beginning to become, at least, it was good for the Googles and other things, the places where they use this, where these technologies evolved. But while some banks were adopting it, some weren't really, right? And it seemed like for a mid-sized bank, adding layers of technology would just make it too complex for them. So some of those decisions around what technology choices to make and how much to sort of overload your architecture with so many multiple technologies that it becomes difficult to maintain. So those decisions we had to take, that hey, okay, this is not going to work. Let's not put time in this technology. So most of the decisions were around technology decisions, and that's where I think having our CTO is a brilliant. He spent 30 years in Microsoft, and he's of the opinion that if your objective is to buy chilies from the market, you're not expected to build a truck to buy chilies, right? You better have a cycle to buy those chilies. If your main purpose is to go to the mandi and get vegetables, you're not going to buy a Lamborghini for that, right? Or build a Lamborghini for that. So that thinking really helped. That hey, what really are you building? Who are you building it for? Maybe a big bank needs that layers of technology, scalable, and all of that. But if your target customer is a small, not even $1 billion in assets, right? They're not going to need that technology. You may use it for impressing people, but you have to be practical in that hey, why would I build a very complex technology for them? So these were some cases where we said that, and then we decided that if we are targeting both these markets, then maybe we need to have an architecture that caters to both, right? So you had to take those kind of decisions, that hey, there will be a single platform eventually, but we build it in such a way that a smaller bank, we can have a lightweight installation of the same product. For a larger bank, who wants it on premise and all of that, you can have a slightly more sophisticated technology stack. So that's where doing those prototyping, trying out different technology stacks, and then deciding, okay, this is what we want to really go with. Right? Those were some decisions we took, and in hindsight, some were good. Some we all still feel that, hey, okay, we shouldn't have spent so much time. If we had not spent that time trying to do this, maybe we could have come up with a few features faster. Those debates are always there, but I think you learn from all of these experiences. And that's the beauty of a product company, that nothing is waste. Even a failure really helps you in future decisions. That, hey, when we did this last time, this is what we did wrong, so we better not go that path again.
Right. Yeah. So before we move forward, one more question for you, Arun. I'm going to give you. I'm going to actually read aloud a very famous limerick. It is also an anonymous limerick, and I want you to complete the last word of this limerick.
Okay, you've done your research very well. So all things that I like to do.
So the limerick packs laughs anatomical into space that is quite economical, but the good ones I have seen so seldom are clean, and the clean ones so seldom are dash.
So can you repeat the first line again?
The limerick packs laughs anatomical into space that is quite economical, but the good ones I've seen so seldom are clean, and the clean ones so seldom are dash.
So I can give any word, or you want it's an actual limerick for which I have to find the right word?
Yes. It is about limericks as well. So
yeah, anatomical, economical. Those were the two words, right?
Right.
Ones which are seldom very clean are
the clean ones so seldom are dash.
Biblical, no. Anatomical, economical, philosophical, no.
Not philosophical. It's funny that you're not getting this.
Inimical, no.
And that was a clue.
Funny. Okay. What is funny and ends with cull?
Okay, I'll give it to you. Are comical.
Comical, okay.
Yeah.
I was looking for a longer word because
right.
You said economical and anatomical. So I was looking for a 3-syllable word.
Correct. Yeah. So, again, this is something which is of interest to you, poetry and limericks. I see you, attempting quite a few limericks on Twitter as well. Again, do you try to do this as a very, deliberate habit, or is this something which, if it just comes to your mind, you'll try to write it?
Yeah, no, limericks is just a fun thing, right? I always, from college times, I had this. I used to love the play of words, right? And we used to do funny things. We used to write rap songs on professors and all of that, right? And that's where limericks stuck. But I used to do this a lot when in college, and then there was a lull for almost 10 years, 12 years where I never did this, right? And then the social media came, and I saw that there's so many people out there who are so good at this, right? And I think that's what triggered the whole thing again, right? When you see somebody write a nice limerick, my natural tendency is to add to it with something logical or an extension to it with my, right? So it's like a putting a witty repartee or a witty response to somebody's limerick. That's how I got again interested in that. But it is just purely out of fun. But poems, I do it consciously sometimes when I'm thinking. And for me, again, my poems are not on anything. Usually, I try to look at my poems in terms of life in general and associating it with nature or elements of nature, right? So, while you know haiku is of that, right? Haiku, but I am not into that haiku. But generally, it's about talking about life and problems of life or situations in life and correlating it to what you see in nature. Because I am a huge believer that I mean, human beings, we see ourselves distinct as from being from nature, right? We see that all nature is, but if you take an outside view, you are part of the nature. You are just one amongst it. What happens to you is what is happening to to the nature around you. So that's where I see a close association with human life and situations with what we see in nature, be it seasons, be it flowers, be it things, and that's where most of my poetry is around, because I generally love nature, be it birds, flowers, trekking, right? So that's where when I do poetry, it is more conscious. The other thing, and I wanted to relate this. When last week I was down with COVID, and for 2 days I lost my sense of smell and taste, right? And with two vital senses gone, even if it was just 2 days, it was such a weird feeling, right? It made me think that, hey, I mean, if you don't have these two senses, I mean, it takes away so much of your ability to do things. You can't taste what you are eating, and you can't smell things around you. It was a very weird feeling, right? And to me, being able to assimilate these senses, so what you see and how you can capture it in words, is something that has always fascinated me, and that's where my passion for poetry or writing or blogging or anything, it's always a combination of visual with written words. I want to correlate these two things, because I feel that they cannot be distinct, right? What you write, no matter how nicely you describe it, if you can give it a real visual connotation through a photograph or image or whatever, drawing or cartoon or anything, right? It adds a lot to that. So my passion for poetry is always trying to correlate these visual images that I have and contextualize. Limericks is of course just for fun. You can write anything there and it goes well, as long as it rhymes and has a funny end to it. But serious poetry, I'm not like a serious poet or anything, but I do take out time sometimes, and there are periods. It's not that when I go through certain periods of either intense stress, that's when I think a lot of my poetry comes, right? Because I see it as a great stress buster, just to put your thoughts on paper and give it life through association with reality in life.
Right. Arun, you also mentioned that your limericks and it comes from social media. So I had a question. When you moved to this role at Hexanika, did you also deliberately change the kind of content you consume? People you follow to be able to sort of develop that appreciation, understanding,
right?
The product managerial kind of mindset.
Honestly, not much. I do follow a few handles which are more tech oriented or right in areas that are there, but I always seen social media as a mode to disassociate from work. I see it more as a either general information seeking or leisure and pleasure, right? Those are my primary drivers. I do follow people who post very interesting and different things, different from what I do on a day-to-day basis, right? That's where I see the value of social media. At work, you are doing the same thing, you're talking to the same kind of people anyway. But social media allows you the opportunity without being intrusive, or even that person not wanting to talk to you, you can still hear what he or she has to offer. That's the power of Twitter, right? You can follow any handle there, as long as, and you don't need them to follow you, right? They may or may not, but you can still learn from them. And that's most of the handles I follow have I either on an area that is an additional passion or an interest for me, or is something quirky, funny, or different, right? Those are the people I love to follow. That's my, at least on Twitter. On Facebook, of course, it's all family, and there I would rather use it to propagate my own passions like poetry and my thoughts on various things. So I think that people who know you probably appreciate it more. On social media, I use it more as a information seeking, right? So I guess like you guys have completely different unique content to put out there, right? And just clicking on the link would post and spending 5-10 minutes reading that, it is a different, you spend 5 minutes knowing something different. You may not use it on your day-to-day basis, but it just stimulates a different thought process. Or people like Amit Paranjpe, right? Or people Mula Mutha, for example. They are all Pune-based people, but history, I like history generally. I'm not like passionate, but knowing about history, events, I like a lot. Architecture, ancient Indian architecture, I like. So those are the handles I follow in areas which are not related, but I think they indirectly help you, right? Because when you follow things that you like, which you are not able to do in your day-to-day work, it stimulates certain things behind the scenes, right? It's probably not conscious, but it's subconscious. Oh, okay, I did this, and somewhere it helps you in your own efficiency, productivity in what you're doing, right? So that's the kind of social media I like to follow.
Right. And outside of social media, any advice that you would give for would-be product managers, especially people who are moving from other functions to a product manager kind of a role? Where should they actually learn product management from? What are the kind of skills that they should develop, and any advice on those?
Yeah. No, so again, there are again very good handles who you have to seek out, right? People, I've seen a lot of product managers who on Twitter also give out good tips and this thing, right? And as I said, product management is not very well defined per se, right? It is, and that's the beauty of that role. It's very fluid, right? You have to wear multiple hats at different points of time, right? And you have to be a sales and marketing guy, you have to be a architect person, you have to be a developer, you have to be a business analyst, and you also to be a person who is in control of time, resources, budget, and all of that, right? So these are all, it's very difficult to say that go and do a course on resource management. Project management, yes, there are a number of courses. You can do that as a Udemy course or something, just to get the basics of project management. But it's all about applying those tips to the reality of the situation that you are in. That comes a lot with experience. All I would say is go beyond what you are doing, right? So don't just, if you're a programmer or if you're a business analyst, don't just stay limited. Be willing to do project management. Take up new initiatives that come up in your organization, right? Just raise your hand, right? Even, I mean, sometimes I tell people that even so organizations have cultural events or innovation programs, whatever it is. Raise your hand to drive that. That gives you a skill, right? Nowadays, a lot of firms, you do a lot of innovation-oriented workshops and for organizations, right? How do you inculcate innovation? And it is not an easy thing to inculcate innovation mindset. But if you are somebody wanting to be a product manager, if you can drive anything that is innovation-oriented, just collecting ideas from people in your organization, making a list of it, and presenting it in a way saying that, hey, these are some things that you can do, things that product management is all about ideation. It's about thinking about different ways to do things, or thinking about things to be done, new things to be done, right? So that is not something that can be taught. It can only be experienced. So find opportunities to get that experience, right? So participate in innovation hackathons, uh, even social media, right? Follow different people. Need not be follow somebody who is only talking about product management. Follow people who are talking about products in general, about right, new technologies in general. Any information only adds to your repository of knowledge, and where it can be used, you never know, right? So that's general advice. Be open to doing different things, and be open to hearing from different kind of, interact with different people, different skills. People tend to form groups of very like-minded people, and that's what I think kills a lot of innovation, right? We in Cognizant and in Tech Mahindra also, for me, all my colleagues were there, right, who do the same things, but working with the likes of yourselves and right, delivery managers or salespeople, that role allowed us to interact with various people, and then you assimilate that. So be willing to work with different kinds of people and different skilled people. That will add to your own skills. That's all I can.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If I had to sum up what you just said, I think that will also be a nice segue to the next section. I would say think like a mystery detective, right? So before we move to the next section, Arun, the last quiz question for you.
I hope I get this one. Last one was miserable. Anyway.
So, which fictional character has been portrayed on screen by the likes of Soumitra Chatterjee, Sabyasachi Chakrabarti, Shashi Kapoor, and Parambrata Chatterjee?
Kaluza.
Perfect. You get your mystery detective question right. Well done. So, it's a nice segue, like I said, to the next section, where I wanted to talk about the book that you wrote. As I mentioned, you are a published author, Nainapur Adventures, right? That's your book. Everyone, or rather most people that I know, will always say that, yeah, I want to write a book. There is a book somewhere in me.
Everybody has a book in there.
Yes. But most people struggle to even finish a manuscript. Forget about, getting it published. And you chose a genre that hasn't seen a lot of, very popular or great Indian content. Yes, there was, Feluda, and there have been other modern writers as well, but not traditionally the space where a lot of Indian content has been there. So, tell me more about, where that book came from, and, what was that whole process like?
Yeah. So firstly, honestly, it was never that I want to write a book. It started off, I want to write a story, right? And it was something like not recent, 20 years. It's a desire. I want to write, and it probably somewhere innate to me is that create something, right? That desire probably is what was here. That write a story which is a creation of my own imagination, right? That was the primary, right? When it started, I didn't know it would be a mystery adventure, neither it would be of children's the youth genre. But what triggered it in that direction is, so I always loved children's book, right? Even recently, Chronicles of Narnia. I've been fascinated by these authors. They're just brilliant, right? J.K. Rowling. I've read it at least twice. And then earlier, Ruskin Bond. I used to love his books. Or C.S. Lewis. What was that? Willy Wonka.
Right.
And the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah.
So I have been fascinated by that. So when I decided that I want to write something, right? Sometimes you have to also think a little bit logically that, hey, what is it? Will you succeed? Right? You have to be sure that you're starting on something, you have to succeed. So I started ruling out things which were not my strengths. So it was clearly I couldn't do a non-fiction. It had to be a fiction. So all that big gyan needs a lot more research and lot more effort. So I said, hey, that all that is gone. Now, when it comes to fiction, I again don't see myself as somebody who can write grand words or create grand sentences like some of the authors do. Right? I wanted to write something which is simple, which makes it easy for me to write, and then also for somebody who is reading it to understand it. Right? So hence I said that, hey, okay, why not write for children, right? Because children are the they are most difficult to please, but they are easier to grasp attention once you get the pulse of it, right? If you really give them something they like, they are completely unbiased in their love or hate for what you are doing, right? So if they don't like it, they don't like it. It's boring. If they like it, they love it. So that was the thinking. And my daughter at that time, right, she was getting into really reading these books. She used to every day read books, and that's what I said, that hey, if I write something which my kids can read and enjoy, that would really be fulfilling to me, right? Because as I said, publishing a book was as an outcome that came. It was to write a story, and I didn't think I could write a 200-page book to start with, right? I started off with, in fact, my first chapter I wrote was like 10 years back. First chapter. It was just a chapter I wrote. It had no storyline behind it. I said that I will someday develop on this and build something out of it. And then when I started thinking, again, I ruled out children's fantasy, because again, for that, it is difficult to try and either it would, again, thinking logically, just because J.K. Rowling became successful, you don't need to copy that genre. But what appealed to me was the Enid Blyton kind of, because I saw how kids used to really love that, right? And what I said is that, hey, they love this thing so much, right? All the kids are reading all this Enid Blyton. These books are like at least 50 years old, if not older. They are of a different era altogether. Still, they seem to like it, right? It's not even, none of them know XYZ lane of UK or London. Nobody has been there, but still they seem to like it. So it's not about the time period or the place. It's about that experience of children doing something, right? That was important. But if I can give it an Indian and a more recent context, maybe it may, I'm not copying something that is already out there. I'm giving it an Indian context. But I'm keeping the theme of friends, adventure, mystery, and you building something on it. So that's what really, finally I decided that, okay, this is what I want to write on. Right? It was, I wouldn't say it was spontaneous. I really gave it a lot of thought before embarking on, right? So in fact, I started something on the fantasy side. It didn't work for me. I stopped that, right? And then I started. And as I said, one of the things I was very sure that I want to incorporate elements of my own experience as a child or a growing up in what I write. Right? So that's where, again, I could have chosen a real city, right, Mumbai. But then it wouldn't have given me the liberty of creating my own imagination into that, right? So Nainapur was that imaginative fictional. There was an element of fiction there. I could create any location in that town. I could borrow from Mahabaleshwar, I could borrow from Shimla, I could borrow from any place, my birthplace, and create something. So that's why Nainapur came. And I don't know why I use the term Nainapur. It just seemed simple but appealing to me. And then when I decided on that term, you had to give some rationale to why Nainapur. So there are elements in the story which, why is it called Nainapur and why it is relevant. So then I started building on the story as if it would be a 2-3 series stories. I've run the first book. I obviously want to do at least 2 more books using the same characters and the same locales, but with a different mystery. So that's how the thinking came. And as you asked about how did you culminate it, right? It was not, it just happened, right? And this, most of it happened when I was transitioning from Tech Mahindra to Hexanika. I decided to take this 15-day break and do what I liked. And suddenly that period where nothing else was binding me, no work, nothing, I think that ideas flowed and 80% of the story got written there. And then it took a lot of time to, of course, get it out as a published book. And probably we'll talk about it if there's interest. But that's how the book really came about, right? There was this 15-day period where I consciously put in effort, and once the flow came in, I could get most of the story in place. And then it was about refining it to get it publishable content.
It was like sprints in your agile methodology. Yeah?
Right. Yeah, so, it was actually a sprint. 15 days, I need to get it out, otherwise I won't get time again.
So what was the toughest part of getting the book published? We spoke about you writing the story. What was the toughest part of getting it published, and what was the most fun part?
Yeah. Okay. Toughest, I wouldn't call it. Yeah, it was tough, but it was more, I think, challenging is to do the editing, right? So you have to do your own round of editing, right? And what was the most difficult thing there was, every time I used to read, I would want to change. I would always find something that this doesn't seem right. And after a while, I became a little bit obsessive about getting facts correct. So I used to go back to calendars. Oh, is this date a Purnima date when there is a full moon? So if it has to be a full moon and it has to be a Tuesday, then which year it has to be? And if it has to be this year, then what else has to be? And I got into that mode of really getting very, very particular about certain things. Or if somebody has to go from point A to point B in 10 minutes, how much would that distance be if he was walking and if he was running? So I started doing all these stupid things to actually measure things, right? So it was fun, but I think it you have to again at the end decide that okay, this is it. Because every time you read, you say, oh, ye thoda twist karo, ye language is not. Even today, I open the book and read any page, I'll find 3 sentences where I think, yeah, I should have used this grammar differently, or I should have used this tense, constructed this sentence. So editing it, biggest, right? And till while you are editing it, you are trying to get some publishers, right? So it was very clear that after a few attempts that I had to do self-publishing, because if I have to get it out within a time frame, that is the best way to do. So I got a good publisher, Pune-based, and only when I gave it to them and they assigned an editor, and that person read and said that okay, I think 99% things are very good, right? Do the small changes, 10%, 1 or 2% of grammatical changes, and as a third person, I would love to read this book. That was the time when I stopped doing this thing, right? So I made my kids read, I made some other random kid read, I made a lot of people read it, and they all give some inputs, and you want to implement that. But only when it gets into a formal process of editing by an editor with the intent of them looking at it from a lens of, hey, can this be published? That's when I really stopped trying to make changes. So that was the difficult part, getting it edited to my own satisfaction and somebody's satisfaction. The fun piece, and again, this comes to, I talked about my desire to marry words with visual, this thing, right? So I don't know if you've seen, I have incorporated a few pictures in that, and it almost came as an afterthought, right? When I found the publisher, I said, hey, how would it be if I put in some good pictures? I always wanted to incorporate a map of Nainapur, because I said which is my creation, and I'm talking about all these locations, mandir here, museum there. How will a young kid of 10, 12 years be able to visualize all of that? So let me put it back. So creating that, it was like I'm creating my own small town, right? It is a town of my creation. Every location there is what Arun Iyer wants it to be, right? If there is a museum here, it is my museum. It is, and I am really thinking about and creating it. So that was the most fun part, right? Me creating that map first of all, and then these 6-7 images that I have incorporated, because I felt that without in kids we all love comics, right? And why comics are so appealing is because with the words there is the picture has more important. The words are not so important. So I thought that having images in my book would really enhance the readability of that book, and creating those 6-7 images, deciding which are the most impactful in terms of associating it with the storyline, right? Putting it at the right places. You just don't want to put random pictures. You want to associate it with events that are exciting within the book, or you think are exciting within the book. So deciding that, and then I love to sketch. So even though they are not great drawings, I said that I will let me anyway. It's self-published book. Who is going to object? It's my book, right? All of it. So I drew those images, and that was a very enjoyable. It was like after everything had been done, I spent 1 or 2 weeks making these pictures and the map, and I think a lot of kids loved that in the book. That hey, when we were reading, we could go back to that map and relate that hey, okay, these 4 guys are at this point here, right? From here they are moved here. This is where a robbery has occurred or something has happened. So that I think enhanced the book quite a bit.
Right, right. So we have actually a question from Ramanan's daughter Shubhrati, who asked me to ask you this specific question: when is the next book in the Nainapur adventure likely to be written?
Okay, a very difficult question, and actually, what I can say is it has been started. The process is started. When it will complete, I don't know. And this is where what motivates, right? Everybody, anytime a child reads it and enjoys it, and as I said, their feedback is always dispassionate, right? It is as they see it. So if they liked it, they have liked it. If they have not, they haven't. So when somebody says that, hey, I like this, and I would love to read a book of a similar nature, and when are you writing it? That sort of motivates me to continue that effort. Although I think what has, if I were to say why it has not taken the pace I would like, is I think this period, while it has given me a lot of opportunity, the mental frame state is not good, right? I mean, we are going through this somewhere, even though overtly you are not stressed, but I think overtly you are stressed about all these things, and that's where I don't believe I need to have some sort of clairvoyance, some creative this thing to have a flow of ideas. But I do feel that when you are thinking about a storyline, you need to have a slightly uncluttered mindset. Right? And I've been able to do it in spurts, but it has not. I think I'm still missing 1 or 2 characters in that storyline to really give it. So I've done, I would say 30-40% is written. I know what I want that storyline to be, what the mystery should be, what elements may interest a kid. But hopefully this year, I've set a target 2021. At least get the manuscript out, and publishing it is a different matter.
Right. We'll inform Shubhrati about
I realize that kids grow so fast, right? And their interest changes. So if you have a captive audience which have loved it, in 2 years, they may no longer be interested in that book.
True. Thought like a product manager. So another question, and this is very relevant to what you just mentioned, Arun. You dabble in poetry, photography, travel blogs, trekking. So how do you manage to schedule, all of this? How do you find time? And has it changed over the last 1 year? How has that impacted?
Yeah. No, honestly, again, these things are difficult to schedule, right? You have to just. And I think sometimes it helps to be a little bit impulsive in taking these decisions. Just do it when you have the time. If you plan for it, I always seen we are disappointed when I plan. When I plan a good major trip, with the family, something like COVID comes and it has gone for a toss. But when we have said, okay, next weekend, let's do this, it invariably happens. So my philosophy is don't plan for it, do it when you get the opportunity, right? Especially trekking. I think what triggered it really is the 6 months of being locked down at home and right, really stressful work period at that time. And then once things opened up, we said that okay, let's start. And one thing led to the other. And again, it also a lot depends on how much your family or friends or whoever you are trying to do things with also enjoy it with you, right? So if your kids also start enjoying it, it motivates you to do more of that. So if they show interest in birds, you want to do more of that. If they show interest in trekking, you want to do more of that, right? So that's, I would only say that be spontaneous with this. That's what I have found it easy. So poetry also, I can't plan to write a poetry, but one fine day I will feel like, okay, let me write about this. And if I give an hour or so, I will, I mean, and again, who are you writing for? You're not writing it for some acknowledgement from this thing. You're not Lord Tennyson or any of those anyway. It's just an outlet for your own thoughts, right? And I see all of these as stress busters only.
Right. So, yeah. Brilliant. So now we'll come to the last section, Arun, where I will ask you about the future relevance of some things that I will ask you about, and you can give your hot takes on each of these. So the first one is business analysts. What do you think is the future relevance of business analysts?
I think I mean I can make a sentence, right? Or I tell a sentence.
Yeah.
So I think business analysts need to be adaptable. So if you can adapt to the changing environment, you can definitely make a huge impact, which means being able to do different things and being able to change or add to your skill sets gradually over a period of time.
Okay. What about
passion
economy or the creators economy? Like people who are doing multiple things like writing and poetry and drawing and trying to monetize this, but that's not really their primary source of income.
Right. So for me, I would say that every individual has some latent passion, right? Which is, I think you guys have written about that ikigai, right? That it's very rare to be able to do things that you like, right? And like the things that you do, right? That sweet spot is available only for a few people, right? But all of us have this passion, what we want to do in life, right? And I would only say that it is inevitable that you have to follow a particular line of work, right? That's how opportunities come, and most of us have gone a path because that's, as long as you can find ways to like it, that is what I would go for. Whereas keep your passions and your interests as something that you would do anyway, because it's not going to help. It might not help you today. It's going to help you once you have decided enough work is enough and I want to do something that I like, right? So continue with that that passion. Not everything needs to be monetized, right? I mean, yes, if you have a desire to write a book, write it. Don't expect it to earn you becoming a international bestseller, right? But as long as you can come up with a good quality, don't just write for the sake of writing it. Give it good thought, and it will serve as your own satisfaction, and maybe 50, 100, 200 people will like it, right? So be it. Don't expect it everything to be something that very few people can really make solid money out of writing, right? I mean, how many authors are there and how many really make money out of it? But just do it because if you like it, just get it done with, because that's your creative outlet. It will not only enhance your ability to do things in your normal professional life better. It may not directly impact, but I certainly believe there is an indirect impact when you let your creative side manifest itself, right? There are folks like our good friend Niranjan, right? He is of a different, he is that I always call him, in Tamil, there was a movie called Sakala Kalavallavan, right? He's that kind of a Pula Deshpande breed of guys, right? Whose work is passion and their interest, everything intermingles, and they are able to do that. But for most of us, it's about liking what you are doing, but then finding out time to do what you like. If you can keep them both on parallel paths, I think you are successful enough. That's my philosophy.
Right. Okay. What about print books? What do you think is the future relevance of print books?
Print books. So I think it is. I mean, it has reduced. I mean, digital media has definitely impacted the way people consume this thing. But I mean, I used to have a Kindle, but after I lost it, I didn't buy another one, and I realized that my reading actually reduced, right? Because I wasn't being able to just carry books and read them whenever I want, whereas Kindle used to give me that flexibility. So although my love is for the print book, I feel that its relevance is reducing. Only I think very few people, old timers, who say, "Oh, I love the smell of an old novel," and all of that is good for nostalgia. But I personally feel that segment is slowly reducing a lot. I mean, kids still would love to read a book and this thing, but I think grown-ups are more attuned to the digital media. So I think that's where the future is.
Right. And the last one, it may actually require a whole 1 hour long episode on it, but I will ask you for a short hot take on that. What about the future relevance of cryptocurrency?
Okay. Yeah. So for me, again, honestly, I have not been able to dabble much in cryptocurrency, right? I think there are a lot of people have very strong views on whether it will work or whether it will not work. I just see it as another, at this stage, another speculative asset. I wouldn't even know whether to call it an asset, but an instrument, right? Which the world is beginning to adopt, right? I think that technology may still have a relevance, but cryptocurrency, I think it still has a long way. I think the countries, unless today, I think with this guy Elon Musk putting money, suddenly its acceptability seems to be, now that Elon Musk has done it, it is going to be much more acceptable, right? And probably that's what it will take it to make it acceptable. Bigger entities beginning to accept it, but I think it's still a long way. It will remain a speculative instrument for at least, for me, 2025. I mean, 3-4 years it will be there. I think a couple of countries need to really come out and start giving it a lot more structure and formalization. That's when it can become mainstream. But till then, it will just remain. It will probably rely on people like Elon Musk to come and prominence. But
right.
I think the technology is relevant, but maybe not the currency itself. Its acceptability is going to take some.
Yeah, I think this is brilliant, Arun. I think the last few questions that I had on the future relevance really covers the entire gamut of topics that we covered through the last 1.5 hours, from print books to passion economy to core banking and proper financial world. So thanks a lot for taking us through this, through your life journey, and all the transitions that you made from these large companies to the small company, and what it takes to make that transition, and the advice that you've given to these people in different roles. It was really great talking to you.
Thanks, Harish. And I mean, just as an end note, right? So I think what I shared is nothing extraordinary, right? Most of us lead ordinary lives, but I do believe that every person has something to learn from every other person, right? You need not always have a Sachin Tendulkar or right Elon Musk who can only motivate you. I go through all your Smartcasts, and every person that you've spoken to, brings in a slightly unique and different facet to their skills, the way they have built their career. So I really love your initiative, and I think each one has of us has an opportunity to learn from the other, right? So I hope my experiences are of relevance for somebody out there, and especially people who are doing things that are similar to what I'm doing.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It was great. I can guarantee that, Arun, that I learned a lot. So I'm sure there'll be many of our listeners who would also feel the same thing. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Pleasure, Harish. Thank you so much.